Greetings, everybody. Zed here. The 4.7 live stream just ended a couple hours ago, and I wanted to make a video about the new possible endgame mode that Hoyo just dropped on us, the Imaginarium Theater. We don't know if this is going to actually be an endgame mode or not, but I'm crossing my fingers, hoping that this is a little bit of endgame that we've all kind of been waiting for, at least those of us who like combat in this game. So I want to get into it. I want to talk about it. I'm so excited that I really can't sleep until I talk about this. I'm actually genuinely hyped. I'm hyped for Genshin in a way that I haven't felt in a long time. So let's talk about it. Let's dive in. I've got a lot to say. All right, before we jump in, I want to lay down a couple ground rules, a couple disclaimers. One, I am a whale. Those of you who have watched my previous content, those of you who know me, you know I am a big whale in Genshin. Not only have I put a lot of money into this game, I have also actually put in a lot of time and effort. Those of you who know me as the Genshin completionist, I don't know if that's an official title or not, but I do have every character in the game at level 90. Most of my talents are all 999 across the board. I have every weapon in the game also at level 90. So not only have I put a lot of money into this game, I have a lot of C6 R5 characters that are 5-star. I've also put a lot of time and effort into the game. Like a ton of time and effort into the game. I play this game every day, minimum 1 to 3 hours every day, depending on what I have to accomplish that's on my checklist. But for me as a whale, I can't relate to the free-to-play experience. For me as someone who takes the game a little bit more hardcore than probably most people do, it's hard for me to relate to that experience. So this may come off a little bit biased. My excitement for a game mode like this may be a little untethered from reality because of the fact that I am a whale and I like this game and I'm passionate about this game, probably at an unhealthy level that most people can't relate to. So please take this with a grain of salt. If you happen to disagree with me, if you're a free-to-play player and you think maybe you have a different opinion than me, that's okay. You and I may play this game differently and think about this game differently from a different perspective. And both of those perspectives are valid. I'm here to give my perspective. If you have a differing opinion, the comment section down below is always open to you. The other disclaimer I should make is that this game mode has some unknowns. And the unknowns that we don't know are actually pretty big unknowns. These unknowns could make the mode completely flop and be an absolute disaster. There's also the possibility that these unknowns make the game mode the best end game mode we could have possibly wished for. I will get into those unknowns later in the video, but just keep that in mind. This isn't all solid fact yet. There's a lot of details to be fleshed out, and until we can actually play the game mode, we really have no idea what this mode is actually going to feel like. But again, we'll get into that more later. All right, so this is the Hoyo Lab post for this new game mode, this new combat mode, the Imaginarium Theater. We're just going to briefly go over what this new game mode entails. This is a brand new mode. It just launched, or they just announced it a couple hours ago. So you may or may not be familiar with exactly what it entails. So we're just going to do kind of a brief overview. Now, this is going to be aligned with the Spiral Abyss, basically. So the Spiral Abyss is being changed to, instead of being every 2 weeks, it's going to be once every month. And in doing that, they're going to also run the Imaginarium Theater alongside it for a month. Now, I don't think they both start and end at the same time. I think every 2 weeks, they kind of leapfrog one over the other. So we'll have, the Imaginarium Theater change, and then 2 weeks later, the Spiral Abyss will change. Then 2 weeks later, the Imaginarium Theater will change. So they're going to kind of coexist and leapfrog one over the other. This first one starts on July 1st, and the first season is basically going to only allow you to pick pyro units, electro units, and animo units. Now that's going to change with each new reset. I assume they're going to play with different combinations of elements as the theater resets over and over, so should be really interesting there. Now moving on, you are going to have specific opening characters. It's going to force you to start with 6 specific characters. Now, if you don't have the 6 specific characters that they want you to start with, they are offering trial characters. So this is really interesting. If you don't have the characters, you still can do the mode. And I think that's kind of the best part about this. Even if you don't have every single character, you can sub in these trial characters and hopefully make it work. Now, aside from the starting characters that they give you, you're also going to be able to select alternate characters. Now, this is where the alternate characters elements come into play. Your alternate characters have to match the 3 elements that I mentioned before. So animo, electro, and pyro. There's also a couple exceptions as well. You can do a supporting cast. So if your friends will put a bunch of characters on their supporting cast list, and you can opt to borrow a friend's character to join you as well. So this is also really interesting because you can play your friend's whale character. If you have a friend who has a C6 R5 Arlecchino, this gets you a chance to actually play C6 R5 Arlecchino, which you otherwise would not be able to do. So this is actually really, really neat. And then they also have what's called special guest stars, and these are characters that they've pre-selected, and they don't have to match the 3 elements, which is the nice part, but they're select characters that they pre-selected that you can also add to the roster. Now, generally, I think these are just going to be the characters that are on the banners. Again, this is kind of a business decision, I think. They're trying to incentivize you to pull for the characters that are on the current banners. That way, you're like, oh, if I pull for this character, I can use it in the Imaginarium Theater. And they're trying to incentivize you. And I think that's primarily a business decision, right? Once you've selected all of your characters, you will go into the theater and you'll do your combats. Each character is given what's basically called 2 Vigor. And once you do a combat with a specific character, they lose 1 Vigor. And then once they reach 0 Vigor, they are no longer allowed to be selected for combat. So this is just a way to basically make you move through all of your characters so you don't just like fight with the same team of 4 over and over and over throughout all the combats, because that would be pretty boring in my opinion. This is to get you to mix up and use some strategy and try to think of, your different team compositions that you want to use within the theater. And I think that's really inventive. It's a way to get you to play on your feet and maybe not necessarily have it be about the character's strength as much as it is your team building abilities. How well can you recognize how 2 characters work well together, put them on a team, and then lead that to a successful clear? So I think that's really, really cool that they're doing that. They also mention here that from the 6 starting characters that we showed above, like these 6 characters here, the Arlecchino, Toma, Clorind, Kuki, Wanderer, Farazan, whenever one of those characters enters combat, you actually are offered a buff, which I think is really, really cool. And this buff actually takes place outside of the theater as well. It takes place in the Abyss, which I think is crazy. The Overworld. It's not a huge buff, 20% attack, defense, HP. They're not huge buffs, but the fact that they work in the Spiral Abyss is actually kind of insane to me. One thing to note that I actually kind of find interesting is if you have a character that scales off multiple stats, they actually benefit more than your typical character. So think of like your Ayato type character who has, it's an attack scaling character, but he also benefits from HP in certain ways. And there are quite a few characters that actually benefit from both stats, not equally, but, they usually skew one stat over the other, but there are a lot of characters that do benefit from having multiple stat increases out of these 3 options. So that's something interesting to consider, I think. As you're traveling through the levels and beating levels, they're going to present you with these choices here. I guess there's a currency that you get when you beat the levels. We're going to call them roses. They look like roses to me. I'm not sure if that's actually what these currencies are going to be called, but it looks like you're going to be able to spend your roses to maybe gain a buff or add a character to your roster that you didn't pre-select at the beginning. It's kind of making it like a roguelite where you're moving room to room and you can pick, to gain buffs, gain companions, choose what enemies you want to fight, that sort of thing, to kind of keep you on your toes a little bit. Keep it fresh, keep it so it doesn't get too stagnant, like you're just doing fight after fight after fight after fight. You're kind of making some decisions outside of combat that may be interesting. Now, we don't know too much about this specifically. The choices could end up being insanely boring and irrelevant. We don't actually know this yet. This is kind of one of those unknowns that I was talking about earlier. But from a brief glance, could be really inventive and really fresh. But again, we don't know for sure until we actually play test it. So this here shows the rewards for beating it. It looks like you need to complete 3 stages, 6 stages, or 8 stages in order to kind of reach the thresholds for the different reward structures. I think the only way you can do all 8 stages is in hard mode, so that's kind of interesting. We don't actually know how hard mode is going to be, so it's hard to say whether this is justified or not. I was kind of hoping the Primo Gems wouldn't be locked behind hard mode. I would much rather prefer all the Primo Gems be locked behind easy and normal, and maybe make beating hard mode just weapon crystals or something that has nothing to do with wishes. Heroes wits, weapon crystals, Mora, just superficial rewards that are more for the hardcore player who just wants to beat the mode because they can flex and say that they did. For me as a whale, I don't need the hard mode to give me Primo Gems. I don't care about that. The hard mode for me, I want it to be super challenging and I want it to not give rewards really. I just want to say I beat it because, I beat it because I invested into my characters and did something that, took a lot of time and effort. But this kind of scares me a little bit because it looks like they are locking Primo Gems behind the 8th floor clear, which I think can only be done in hard mode. So until we know exactly how hard mode is, this is kind of wishy-washy. We don't know. Maybe hard mode will be really, really easy and you can beat it with the trial characters, and I guess that will be fine. But for me, that's going to create more problems that we'll discuss later. Definitely that we'll discuss later. Okay, I think that about covers everything that we do know. I want to talk about what we don't know, because I think that's, to me, is kind of the more crucial thing, right? All right, so now that we've talked about what we do know, let's talk a little bit about what we don't know. The major thing that we don't know is how difficult this mode is really going to be. We know there's easy mode, we know there's normal mode, we know there's hard mode. We know that between the different modes, you have different character requirements and there's a different amount of stages. So I believe easy mode, there's only 3 stages and I forget the exact amount of characters you need to bring. I think it's like 12 or 10. And then hard mode, you have to get through 8 stages and you can bring up to, I believe it's 16 characters. So we kind of know a little bit about the details, but what we don't know is how hard is this going to be? And in my opinion, we kind of need the Goldilocks effect here. If it's too easy, it's going to be boring. It's going to be trash. If you can just go in with the trial characters on the hardest mode and just like completely destroy everything, that's going to make this event extremely boring. Now, it's going to be good as far as rewards are concerned because then everybody can get all the rewards, and that I do think is a plus. I think everyone should be able to get all rewards regardless of the difficulty level. But if the enemies are too easy and all you have to do is bring the trial characters, I think that definitely undermines the character building aspect, because I think what the greatest thing about this event is that you're encouraged to build a wide roster of characters that are powerful. And if you don't have to do that, then I feel like that just undermines the purpose of the mode. So for me, if it's too easy, I think the event is garbage, personally. Now, if it's too hard, I think that also has its own problems. And for me, the hard part of it is just the unfairness of it. Obviously, if it excludes like free to play players or makes free to play players feel like they don't have a chance, then that I think is just unfair in general. Now, again, if there are no rewards locked behind the hard mode, I think that's completely justified then. Make it as hard as you want, as long as there's no rewards locked behind it. You know, I'm kind of greedy in that way. I'm a whale player. I invest a lot of time in my characters. I have a large roster of characters. I want a really hard, challenging mode that's going to entice me to use my full roster. I am salivating at the mouth for that. I love the combat in this game so much. And the only thing that's been lacking with the combat is a reason to use all the characters. Having a hard mode that actually challenges you and makes you want to vertically invest in your characters and make them as powerful as possible so you can actually beat the mode, that's a dream for me. But at the same time, I don't want rewards for doing that. And I don't want free-to-play players or low spenders to feel excluded by not getting rewards that whales can get. I just want a hard mode so that I, as a whale, can flex my whale muscles, and I don't need rewards for that. I just want to flex, you know? That's it for me. That's just like, I just want to be like, hey, look, like I invested in my characters. I have a wide roster of characters. I put all this time and effort and money into my characters. I say money and then I laugh, but you know, I want to be able to show that off and be proud of that. I know it's silly because it's just a video game, but like for me, that's what I live for. I love that kind of stuff. So again, if it's too easy, I think it's going to be garbage. If it's too hard, I think that's going to be unfair if they don't do it right. I want something kind of in the middle, like, and I've already kind of explained that. You know, I want there to be easy mode to be easy. I want normal mode to be normal so that like trial characters can beat it. Maybe easy is like really easy. Normal is more like not hard, not easy, but like you got to put in a little bit of effort to beat it, and then have all the rewards be behind those two modes, and then give us a hard mode that's like crazy hard, like kind of like the event we have right now with the where you have to platinum the Regisvine that we're fighting in the current event, something like that where it's that level of difficulty. You know, that's what I crave. That's what I want. That would be the perfect way to roll out this event. If that's the case, then we're golden. I think that would make everybody happy in general. Now, I will say we know that the monsters cap, I believe, at level 90 on hard mode. So judging from the current Spiral Abyss, we know that I think it's like floor 11 has level 90 monsters. That's where the level 90 monsters cap. Floor 12 is more like 95 and 100. So we know how difficult floor 11 is. It's not that crazy. It's not that crazy hard. I don't anticipate this being that difficult. The one caveat we have is that because you're bringing like this mishmash of teams, you aren't going to have your best teams. So the lower difficulty may be balanced by the fact that we're not bringing like our best team comps. Like for instance, in this event, you know, you have Arlecchino, right? But you can't bring Yelan to vape because she's not, you know, unless your friend has a Yelan, you can bring one Yelan, but you can't bring, once you've used Yelan twice, you know, Arlecchino can't vape anymore. Although you can only bring Arlecchino twice, but I mean, you guys get my drift. Like eventually you're going to run out of characters to bring all the best compositions. Like for instance, Alhaitham, you can't, you know, you can use Alhaitham because he's going to be a special guest character in this first iteration. But you can't bring Nahida. Nahida's like his best buffer. Your Alhaitham's going to be weaker. If you're used to playing Alhaitham with Nahida, you're going to notice he's not going to be as strong without Nahida. So it's going to be interesting to see if the lower level monsters balance out with the fact that you can't bring the strongest team composition. It's going to be interesting to see how that all plays out. All right, so let's talk about some of the pros and cons. These are just personal preferences on what I think are pros and cons for this new mode. First pro we should mention is it's really cool that, and this is more for free-to-play players, honestly, a cool bonus, is that you're going to get to use a ton of trial characters. Like, you're going to get to use trial characters and combinations of trial characters that you've never been able to use before. And I think that's actually kind of a huge plus in this mode. We already have trials, when a new character is on a banner, they give us, in the events page, you have the trial page where you can try out a new character. But they always force the team composition. So some of the team compositions are cringe. So, like, you're not actually testing the character in an environment where you can fully utilize their full potential. So this mode might actually give you, as a free-to-play player, a chance to test some characters that you otherwise wouldn't get to test. The other thing is the friend, borrowing a hero from a friend. That's insane. Like, free-to-play players, you're going to be able to borrow whale characters. If you just have a friend who's a whale, you're going to be able to borrow their character and see what it's like to play a whale character. And I think that's honestly super hype. If I was a free-to-play player, I would think that's just awesome, right? Another pro, obviously, is the more Primo Gems. We're getting an extra 12 to 15 wishes a year. It's not a lot, but I feel like that should be mentioned. That's definitely a pro, right? This next pro is maybe a little bit biased, but one of the cool things I think about the way they've structured this event that Spiral Abyss doesn't do is that it's going to get you to play outside your comfort zone, right? Spiral Abyss, as it currently is you build 8 heroes, and then you just beat it over and over again with those same 8 heroes ad nauseum. Now, if you don't really care about combat and you just want to get the rewards, that's probably fine. I think for me, and probably a lot of other people I would wager, having these restrictions on who you can bring forces you to, think outside the box, play with characters in combination and team comps that you normally wouldn't play. And I think that is going to be really interesting and fun. I know it's like we always want to just play with the characters we like the most. We want to use the most powerful team comps. I'm guilty of that in Spiral Abyss. I'm always using the meta heroes to just smash through it. But I think being forced to weave your way through and prove your game knowledge about how the characters interact with each other and try to piece together teams that you wouldn't normally play and see how they function together, even if they're technically worse, I think is actually pretty fun. I'm looking forward to being put in that box. It's a little restrictive, and I can understand why people might not like that, but I think it's a pro. I think it's pretty cool. From a business decision, I can understand why Hoyo wants to do this to us. They want us to feel pressured to kind of build our roster more and wish on characters that we otherwise wouldn't wish on, either because they're not meta or because they are less exciting or not as strong. But from a gameplay perspective, I think it's fine. We have the trial characters, first of all, so you don't really have to wish on them. And second of all, I think it's cool that it's you're not just beating it the same way with the same heroes every time. You're trying out different compositions and trying out different things. So to me, that's a pro. The last pro that I'll mention is, again, kind of more focused on my personal bias, but I like the fact that we now have a game mode that rewards you for building horizontally instead of just vertically. Maybe I should explain what vertical investing and horizontal investing is. Some of you guys may know, some of you guys may not. But vertical investing is when you invest in specific heroes that you already have and just invest in making them stronger. So whether it's talents, artifacts, getting more constellations for heroes that you already have and play, that's vertical investment. Horizontal investment is when you're building a wider roster, adding more characters instead of building up the ones you already have. And this game mode definitely, it's the first time we're actually rewarded for having horizontal investment, where building more characters can actually help you in the long run. And to further touch on that, I think that's actually kind of cool in another way, and that's the fact that you actually have a reason to build 2 different heroes of the same element and the same archetype. So think about it normally people go, oh, is Arlecchino better than Hu Tao? Is Arlecchino better than Klee? Is Arlecchino better than Yoimiya? Is Alhaitham better than Tainari? Is Yaimiko better than Raiden? they all have minor differences, but they all kind of serve the same role in some respect. Either they're like the hyper carry of their element, the DPS character of their element. Even things like Sigewinne is coming and she's going to be a hydro healer. She's a hydro healer, and then you have Kokomi who's a hydro healer. Like, there's no reason to really have both, right? They both do the same thing essentially, maybe a slightly different in different ways, but now there's actually kind of more of a reason to invest in multiple characters of the same element that do kind of fill the same role or the same niche in your team. Now, again, Hoyo wants you to feel that way. They want you to pull for characters of the same element that kind of fill the same role. And this is kind of a way of nudging you to do that. And from a business perspective, I can understand that. Again, though, there are trial characters. So that's something that, like, if you really don't want to do that, you don't have to. But at least now, if you want to do that, there's a reason and there's a reward for doing that. You know, because I hardly play with, for example, Ningguang. You know, like I would never really want to ever build Ningguang because I already have Ito. And it's like, okay, well, they're both Geo DPS. Well, now I have a reason to actually maybe build Ningguang because I may want a second Geo DPS besides Ito. So like that, to me, that's kind of interesting, the way this game mode is sort of fleshing that out. Now, maybe some of the cons. Let's talk about a few of the cons. I think generally, again, I'm super jazzed for this game mode, so I may be a little bit biased. I think really the only cons I can think of this event, because if you really don't like combat events, you don't really have to do this event. The only reason you wouldn't do this event is because you'd be missing out on Primo Gems. And again, I can understand how you would feel left out if you didn't like the event and you were missing out on all those Primo Gems. Like, I can understand that. So again, I really hope that that doesn't become a con and they just make all the Primo Gems easily accessible, even for people who maybe really don't like combat events as much. Kind of the way the Spiral Abyss does now, where, you know, maybe if you can just clear through floor 11, you know, you've got most of the rewards at least. You're not really missing out on that much every time. Hopefully they kind of make it like that, where it's not too detrimental if all you want to do is just play with the trial characters, quickly get the rewards because you don't vibe with the event, and then just check out. Like, hopefully that is a viable option. If it's not, then I will consider that a huge con of this event. And again, we really just don't know, because we don't know how strong these enemies are going to be in relation to the trial characters and how hard it is to progress with the trial characters. Really, that's the only con I can, like, honestly, truly think of. If you have any more cons that you can think of, please note them down below. I'm sure I'm not thinking of some. And again, I think I have kind of some rose-tinted glasses on because I'm just really, really hyped about this event. It's hard for me to think in those terms. But if there's anything about this that you find discouraging or unacceptable, or you just downright don't like, let me know down below. I would love to hear your feedback on that. All right, guys. Well, I think that about covers all of my thoughts on this event. Again, I am super hyped for this. Outside of this event, 4.7 looks to be like a real banger of a patch. I haven't been this excited about a Genshin patch in quite a while. I mean, I was excited for 4.6 with Arlecchino, but that was kind of more just for the character and the story. This is actually like kind of exciting in different ways. We do have a lot of story stuff coming with the Dane's Leaf quest, and we have Clorand and Sigewinne story quest coming up, and then we have this new event that we just spent the whole video talking about. And then Natlan teaser. Natlan is coming soon. All very, very exciting stuff. But yeah, I think that's all I have to say about this. Again, let me know down below if you have any comments or you have anything you want to say. Love to hear your guys' feedback. That is it from me. See ya in the next one.